Professional Rowan has arrived to share with you about our cosmic human origins and how we have been evolving alongside and with the planet herself. I am so incredibly passionate about this topic because there's so much bullshit that's out there in spiritual communities, whether it's the New Age. Go watch Gigi Young's video, Is the New Age Scientology? Whether it's religion, which is missing the Sophianic body and it's an incomplete revelation. And the New Age is also an incomplete revelation. It seems like a lot of places that you look, right, like non-duality and a teaching and a revelation for a previous time, a lot of people are being bombarded with false information about our human cosmic origins and about our evolution story. And we have been really since day one. I mean, I have a freaking degree in anthropology, so I had to take biological anthropology in college, which is the study of how we evolved from apes. The irony of that now, knowing what I know now, is just... So we're going to get into some of that. I'm going to get into the alien creator god myth ideology. I'm going to get into apes very briefly and break down these different components, because if we are not tuned into the reality of our past, if we're not tuned into how the planet has literally been shifting in density, then a lot of the information that we receive is coming through a perception that's incomplete, which is why it's easy to control and manipulate people that don't have the full context. I was thinking about this. It is literally the equivalent to somebody getting in a car wreck or something, or having an complete amnesia. They wake up in the hospital, and have you ever seen those movies, right, where somebody comes in and they're like, I'm your husband, Todd, and that didn't happen, but they don't know. So it's easy to insert lies, incomplete revelations, especially if you have an agenda to control people who don't know any better, which is what's been happening, because our people have been allowing themselves through their conditioning to be used as a battery pack to feed systems that don't really make sense and don't really make them happy. And they're basically, we have a planet, ton of people walking around basically doing slave labor. Okay. So it's no surprise that our human origin story has been fucked with, because if you fuck with somebody's origin story, you have the ability to manipulate and control them and insert false paradigms and narratives that completely change the way that they interact with themselves, other people, and reality. So we did not evolve from aliens, and we did not evolve from apes, though there were offshoots, though genetic modification from aliens and genetic modification through other forms, food, all the way back to Atlantis, which is why I have to start small, because this is a huge conversation. Genetic modification from ETs has happened, right? We know that the government has traded genetic material for certain types of technology. We know that the powers that essentially run the world at large, a lot of them are involved in dark occult, esoteric, hidden knowledge, right? That's been kept from humanity. That genetic trading has happened. Abductions have happened. every form of the attempt to get into the human DNA and change it and modify it in some form, like I was saying, whether it's through this, whether it's through food, has been crazy. Because why is that? Why is that? We're going to get to that. The human form that it is taking, ungenetically modified, is on a path to literally enter into the 10th hierarchy of angels, excuse me. We are angelic beings. We are Christed beings. And we are on a path. If you're in this form, you have an opportunity and a chance to transform and to choose the life wave and to be a part of regeneration, benevolence, and service on this planet. Well, there are a lot of beings, disincarnate beings, that have not been able to take a form because you have to refine the consciousness. You have to evolve with a planet and refine the consciousness in order to take a form. So if beings have failed their initiations and they're not able to inhabit a form, they're operating in the lower astral or in the 8th sphere, well, they need a body. And there have been power exchanges happening between Hollywood, very powerful, right? We all know that. It's not about focusing on that. It's about how does this play into how we look at ourselves and what we don't know. Because sometimes what we don't know is also preventing us from actually taking action in certain areas. Okay, so let's rewind. Genetic manipulation and alteration of the human consciousness has been happening for a long time. We know that. We know that. I won't argue with anybody about that. Just look into MK Ultra, just look into, just open your eyes, right? That's really all it would take. That has happened, but we did not evolve from aliens. No benevolent extraterrestrial, and this is a deeper conversation when we talk about interdimensionals and extraterrestrials and the relationship that they actually have with the earth and different dimensional fields and properly perceiving them in time and space and being initiated to be able to do that. I have to rewind. No benevolent being needs to inhabit your body. So here's the thing. When we were in a previous density, which was not this material, we were receiving cosmic impulses and rays. So it was a natural, we were not individuated. We were a collective consciousness that was literally taking on impressions from higher worlds and from higher beings. Now, obviously that spiritual hierarchy still exists. The difference is that when we come into a phase of individuation, they act more as guides. There's not a need. I mean, certainly as you're expanding your consciousness, right, you can shift into different perspectives. I could shift into a freaking blade of grass if I wanted to. But what I'm saying is that they don't need to inhabit the body. So when we start to look at the transhumanism, when we start to look at and chipping and all adding density to the body, right? What is adding electrical, imbalancing the natural positive, negative, feminine, masculine, electromagnetic field that we are of consciousness, right? We are electromagnetic beings. By adding electricity, and what does electricity allow? It allows energetic, disincarnate forces to move through, right? Technology, when people go in and they put on those tape recorders, right, is able to pick up on disincarnate beings. And so it's able to be a conduit. So there's that level of it. There's also the fact that the New Age has been prepping bodies for a long time, getting people to open themselves up without the proper path of initiation, without, everything. everything became, like I said, the New Age became Scientology. It became so fantastical that people spun out into losing touch with any type of esoteric foundation for how we move through the cosmos and how we evolve. So here's how it happens. We start in a warm, it's a warmth. There's a Saturnian energy. This is the first globe. There's simply a warmth. That warmth moves into a solar phase, the sun phase, which is the second globe. Fire, right? That ignites the consciousness. And then we moved into a lunar phase. This was like a water phase of our evolution of the earth. This is the earth, right? Moving through these globes. And that means that if you've gotten to this point, you've also been evolving along with the earth through these different epochs, through the Lemurian and the Atlantean and the Hyperborean, right? All the way through to what we're now in, which we're calling the post-Atlantean epoch. So after the lunar phase, we then move into the earth phase. And then I believe it's New Jupiter, which will be actually a less dense, right? So it takes our path of transformation and the planet's path of transformation and through the cosmos is through 7 globes, 7 stages. And this 4th globe is the recapitulation and the consolidation of these previous epochs. So there's so much to this conversation. That's what I'm going to lay out for right now. But what that model shows you is the shifting in density. So, right, how I was saying we were once a collective form, but there was no individuated I. We were just receiving those impressions. Well, now we've come all the way. I mean, through all this in-between period, we were in the process of literally coming into form. But the consciousness had to be right. So the same way that people are mixing around and messing around with all this genetic modification now, that's exactly what was happening in Atlantis. And the thing now, though, is that DNA is multidimensional. So we're in the process of literally upgrading our entire DNA through an ascension process, through the process of alchemy and transformation. That is the path that Christ was speaking about. So not this external material version of that process. So in Atlantis, they call them the mad scientists of Atlantis. And there was a lot of experimentation going on with trying to incarnate lower beings, disincarnate beings, in exchange for power. And the other thing too is that there was a secret. There were certain points in our evolution where there is a secret, you'll say, that's unlocked when you merge 2 different forms. And so there was a lot of kind of strange, but it wasn't the correct organic human form that we see today. It was these different variations. And so that actually kind of leads back to the conversation about the apes and why there might be these various forms, right? But the thing we have to understand is that the human being is literally the center of our particular solar system, because the human being is evolving with the earth. We are the stewards of this earth. So it's very, very important to say that, because these beings, Greys or reptilians or Anunnaki or whoever they're saying it seeded our planet, and they're the ones that built the pyramid, which I'll talk about the pyramids in a second. Those are beings who have a relationship to the earth, and they're appearing at this time in the earth's phase, but we have to ask ourselves why. Because certainly within these hierarchies, right? If we're aware of that there were splits, there were fractures, right? Not all aspects of these various hierarchies all decided to go in the same direction. And in the past, that happened as well. And we're experiencing another bifurcation in this timeline where we're seeing a massive split. And this is what I talked about in the podcast as well. At the end of every epoch, there's generally a massive split where some people stay with the old ways, or they kind of go this degenerative path, and then we're being asked to follow the actual evolutionary impulse, which for our time right now is the Christ impulse through the heart. Okay, so these beings, let's say, for example, the Greys. Okay, the Greys are a future timeline of humanity. They have essentially, they do not look human. And that's another thing. We've become so hyper-material that the way that we're perceiving these things is incorrect, because we're not able to understand through the body, through solar initiation. We're not quite yet able to understand, which is why we have all these myths propagating, that these beings are not, they're not coming from, like all of this stuff is interconnected. It's not dissociated, but because we're dissociated, we view the cosmos in a dissociated way. So the Greys are a future timeline of humanity should we go down the path of transhumanism. Should we choose to literally merge with technology, because it degrades the form. You have to have the feminine impulse present, and technology as it stands in front of me right now, this phone, is a purely electrical masculine impulse. Okay, so if we were able to perceive these beings as a future timeline of ourselves, of humanity, how would that change how we would interact with them? And how would that change how we would interact with technology? Knowing that, if we can see that there are certain aliens, so to speak, who are not really alien, because they're actually, some of them are versions of us. And so, not all, right? Then we get into like interdimensionals, and we don't have time for that in this video. I don't even think I have the fucking capacity to go into that, like really truly initiated to go into all of that. But what I do know is that all of these beings are not alien to this planet. Many of them have a connection to us. And if we can understand what that is, if we can understand that we're in the earth phase, that we're in the phase of transformation, of meeting our shadow, of being within a mirror, then we can avoid making the same mistakes that we have made in the past. And we can rise up and we can empower ourselves to really see what's going on here. That if you can tell somebody that they were created by aliens, and you can erase the rest of their spiritual evolution, you can completely insert whatever you want and control them. And that's very, very dangerous. That's a very dangerous ideology. And it also, you know, okay, what are we doing? We're shooting people up, and then we're gonna have that as an ideology, and then we're gonna give people a bunch of fucking ketamine or ayahuasca or whatever and shoot them out into the cosmos with no fucking embodiment. Like it, and then let's layer technology on top of that, right? And then how does a person even discern what is true and what is not true? You see how that is a dissociative, degenerative path. We did not, you know, most of us, I'm going to say, who are probably watching, like, apes, it's not the full story, guys. And the aliens, absolutely not. And if we're going to talk about the pyramids, then let's just apply what I said about a shift in density. That pretty much explains it then. Now it doesn't need to be alien and some, oh my gosh, some higher beings from a higher world came down and they gifted us with this technology and life, and if it wasn't for them, right, we would be nothing. Human beings are basically just stupid, and if it wasn't for these aliens who seeded this planet, it's like, what? What the fuck? No. No. Because if you understand that density was not the same, matter was not the same, our consciousness was not the same, the way that we were interfacing with, not the same. Not the same. Cymatics, everything, literally us as beings and the way that we interfaced with material objects was completely different. So we have to be able to wrap our head around that. And once we do that, it starts to dispel a lot of these myths. So remember how I said that we are angelic beings and we're moving into that's our path of ascension, basically, is to become Christed angelic beings, angelic humans. Well, I saw something very interesting. So Steiner's work says that human beings will become the 10th hierarchy of angels. And when you look at Tesla's 369, all the sacred what? 9 being the end of the cycle, 10 being the extension of a new dimension, the creation of a new dimension of humanity. There was a comment that somebody had put underneath Gigi's video about cosmic and spiritual initiation and evolution. And it was... that alone sparked some things in me, you guys, saying all these words. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else? Okay, there's one last thing. So Steiner talks about this as well. The fallacies, I don't know if he says it like this, but I'm gonna say it like this. The fallacies of the human ego to properly interpret information sometimes. So we have, let's say people in the New Age or just whatever, channeling. I'm going to channel the cosmos. I'm going to channel everything. Now, on the one hand, we are headed towards a place where we can actually turn on these abilities, like I was saying earlier, to maybe step into the perspective of a blade of grass. So it's not to discount the magic that we are and that we have. It's just that we have to check ourselves, because anybody who's claiming to just like, I'm channeling purely the Akashic records, I want to see that person's day-to-day life. I want to see that. I really want to know, because I have pretty much seen no one. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I think it certainly has. I mean, there's been a lot of freaking people who've been able to do that over the course of history. But I think it's very, very rare, and you have to really be a clean and pristine vessel to properly bring through higher dimensional information, as well as like hidden esoteric information within you that it transforms you, right? You don't like seek it out and then you just get it, right? You have to be transformed by it in order to receive the fruits. So nobody can channel the whole, and I think this is part of this arc of individuation that we're in, right? We're losing the guru, we're losing somebody else telling you what your human origin story is. We're losing maybe the fascination with just watching people who claim that they can channel everything within the cosmos. No, there are many, many different systems out there. And if you take the time to study them, and I would say really check out Rudolf Steiner, because it's very helpful, you will see a pattern. You will start to, the data will work upon you. If this is something that is interesting to you, that I've dedicated my life to this, so I love this stuff. But let's not be razzled and dazzled by pony tricks and just people who are out here like not giving a context for what it takes to be able to actually do something like that. And then kind of just being irresponsible and who knows, hooking into the lower astral and being like, la, 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 right? So 'tis the era of discernment, but all of this to say, you're a fucking angelic human. You have a rich past as a soul and as a spiritual being evolving alongside the earth. At least. Don't even get me started on multiple aspects on different dimensional planes outside. We're not going to go there. Outside of this cosmos, right? Because God is unlimited, unlimited. So the next time that you feel scarce, just remember that. We're unlimited. One other thing, as I was editing, I came across this visual for cosmic locus, which was a 7 planetary chain, just like the one I was describing with Steiner. And it starts with, so remember how before I was mapping out warmth, Saturn, which is archetypal. So in this cosmic locus photo, which maybe I'll try to put in here, that first globe was archetypal, which is what receiving, just starting to receive that warmth, those cosmic rays and impressions. And then the next phase, which is the sun phase, the fire that I was talking about in the anthroposophical model. And in the cosmic locus, that is the mental or the creative stage, which makes sense, right? We're starting to form thought. And then you have the lunar phase, which is the third globe, the water phase. And in the cosmic locus, it says that is the formative, right? We think about water in the womb, forming, beginning to form, and us also beginning to literally come into physical form. And then you have the earth phase, which in the cosmic locus is physical, material. Thought that was so cool.